Chapter 20. Off to Dame Slap's school. Joe flew the aeroplane very well indeed. As soon as he was high enough, he pressed the straight-on handle, and the shining aeroplane flew forwards. The children leaned over the side to see what they were flying over. They had soon passed the land of Take What You Want, and came to a strange, desolate country, where no trees or grass grew, and not a house was to be seen. What's that? The country of loneliness, said Moonface, peering over. Don't land there, Joe. Fly on. Joe flew on. Once he came to an enormous hill, and he had to press the handle marked up, or the airplane would have flown straight into it. It was really great fun. Joe had no idea that it was so easy to fly. The little white goat on Bessie's knee was as good as gold. It licked Bessie's cheek every now and then, as if it were a dog. The hens were good and quiet, and the clock lay perfectly still. The aeroplane flew over a land of great towers and castles. Giant land, said Silky, looking in wonder at the enormous buildings. I hope we don't land here. Rather not, said Joe, as he pressed the straight-on handle still further, so that the aeroplane flew forward like a bird, faster and faster. The children's hair streamed backwards, as for Silky's mop of golden hair. It looked like a buttercup blown in the wind. Over the land of lollipops they went, and over the country of Flop. And then the aeroplane began to make a funny noise. Hello, said Joe. What's wrong? I believe the aeroplane's tired, said Moonface. It sounds like it's out of breath. Don't be silly, Moonface, said Joe. Aeroplanes don't get out of breath. This kind does, said Moonface. Can't you see it's painting? It certainly seemed as if the aeroplane was panting, not painting. Don't you hear? Can't you hear it panting? What am I like? Can't you hear it panting? It certainly seemed as if the aeroplane was panting. It went. Had we better go down and give it a rest, said Joe. Yes, said Moonface, peering over the side. It seems safe enough. I don't know what the land is, but it looks quite ordinary. There's a big green house down below, with an enormous garden. Perhaps you can land on the long, smooth lawn. Joe, we shouldn't get bumped then. We shouldn't, land on the smooth lawn, Joe, then we shouldn't get bumped then. Right. I should have kept the pillars from the last thing, shouldn't they? Anyway. Right, said Joe, and pressed the handle marked down, and down they went, gliding smoothly. Bump! They reached the grass, and ran along on the aeroplane's big wheels. It stopped, and everyone got out, glad to stretch their legs. 10 minutes rest, and the aeroplane will be ready to go off again, said Moonface, patting it. I wonder where we are, said Silky, looking around. Moonface gazed at the big green house in the distance, and then he frowned. Oh my, he groaned. I know whose house that is. It's a school, and it belongs to old Dame Slap. All the wicked pixies and gnomes and fairies are sent there to learn to be better. Let's hope Dame Slap doesn't catch sight of us. Everyone looked about nervously. Suddenly, down a path came a tall old woman, with large spectacles on her long and big white... Oh, sorry, I missed that though. Everyone looked about nervously. Suddenly, down a path came a tall old woman, with long spectacles on her long nose and a big white bonnet on her hair. Moonface ran to the aeroplane. "Quick," he said, "it's Dame Slap." But the old woman was up to them before they could escape. "Ah," she said, "so here are another lot of naughty folk sent to me to cure. Come this way, please." "We haven't been sent to you," said Joe. "We landed here to give our aeroplane a rest. We are on our way home." "Naughty boy, to tell stories like that," said Dame Slap, and she gave poor Joe a sharp smack and made him jump and turn red. "Come with me, all of you." There didn't seem anything else to do. Joe, Bessie, Fanny, Moonface, Silky, the white goat, and all the 7 hens all followed Dame Slap, looking very miserable. The clock wouldn't walk, so Silky had to carry it. Everyone felt very hungry. Joe pulled Dame Slap's sleeve timidly. "Could we please have something to eat?" he asked. "Tea will be ready in a few minutes," said Dame Slap. "Heads up, everyone. Don't... Heads up. Hang on. Heads up, everyone." Right. Everyone felt very hungry. Joe pulled on Dame Slap's sleeve timidly. "Could we please have something to eat?" he asked. "Tea will be ready in a few minutes," said Dame Slap. "Heads up, everyone. Don't stoop, little girl." The little girl was poor Fanny, who got a poke between her shoulders to make her stand up straight. Really, Dame Slap was not at all a nice person. It was very bad luck to have landed in her garden, but everyone cheered up a little as the thought of tea. They were taken into a large hall full of pixies and other fairy folk. They were all sitting down in rows on wooden tables, but they stood up when Dame Slap came into the room. "Sit over there," said Dame Slap, pointing to an empty table. The children, Moonface, Silky, and the goat and the hens all took their places. The clock was stood at the end and looked very sulky. The children looked down at the table. "Oh, what lovely buns! What gorgeous biscuits! What big jugs of lemonade!" Dame Slap ran her eyes over the little folk standing at the table. She frowned. "Twinkly, come here," she said. A small pixie walked up to her. "Haven't I told you to brush your hair properly for meal times?" said Dame Slap, and she slapped the pixie hard. Twinkle burst into tears. "And there's Doodle over there with a torn tunic," said Dame Slap. "Come here, Doodle." Doodle came and was slapped very hard indeed. Bessie and Fanny felt nervous and hoped that her hair and hands and dress were clean and tidy. "Sit," said Dame Slap, and everyone sat. "Have a bun," said Joe. Joe doesn't talk like that, does he? No. "Sit," said Dame Slap, and everyone sat. "Have a bun," said Joe, and passed Bessie and Fanny a plate of delicious-looking buns with jam in the middle. But what a shock for them, for as soon as the buns touched the plates, they turned into round, hard pieces of stale bread. The children didn't dare say a word. They saw that the same thing happened to everyone in the room except for Dame Slap, who made a marvellous tea of buns, biscuits, piece of plum cake. The lemonade turned into water as soon as it was poured into the glass. It was dreadfully disappointing. In the middle of the meal, a known servant came in to say that someone wanted to speak to Dame Slap, and she went out of the room, and then, dear me, the children found that the little folk in the room were decidedly yes, to Dame Slap, and she went out of the room, and then, dear me, the children found that the little folk in the room were decidedly very bad indeed. They crowded around them and poked them and pinched them and made such rude remarks that Fanny began to cry. They made such a noise that nobody heard Dame Slap coming back in again. My goodness, wasn't she angry? She clapped her hands together and made everyone jump nearby, and nearly jumped out of their skins. "What's all this?" she shouted, in a very fierce voice. "Form up in a line. March past me at once." To the children's dismay, everyone got a good hard slap as they passed the cross old lady. But when they passed her, she did not slap them, for she knew that they had been teased by the others, so they were very glad indeed and felt a little more cheerful. "Go to the schoolroom," said Dame Slap, when the last of the line had gone by. So to the schoolroom they all went and took their places, even the little green-winged hens. "Now, please answer the questions written on the blackboard," said Dame Slap. "You have each got paper and pencil. Anyone putting down the wrong answers will be very sorry indeed." Joe looked at the questions on the board. He read them out to the others in great astonishment. "If you take away 3 caterpillars from one bush, how many gooseberries will there be left? Add 1 pint of milk to a peck of peas and say what will be left over. If a train runs at 6 miles an hour and has to pass under 4 tunnels, put down what the grandmother is likely to have for dinner on Sunday." Everybody gazed at the board in despair. Whatever did the questions mean? They seemed to be nonsense. "I can't do any," said Moonface in a loud voice, as he threw down his pencil. It's all silly nonsense," said Joe, and he threw down his pencil too. The girls did the same. Silky tore her paper in half. All the pixies and fairy folk stared at them in the greatest astonishment and horror. "Indeed," said Dame Slap, suddenly looking twice as big as usual. "If that's how you feel, come with me." Nobody wanted to go with her, but they found that they had to, for their legs walked them after Dame Slap without being made to. It was most extraordinary. Dame Slap led them into a small round room and pushed them all in. Then she shut the door with a slam and turned the key in the lock. "You will stay there for 3 hours, and then I will come to see if you are sorry," she said. "This is awful," said Joe gloomily. "She's no right to keep us here. What? We don't belong to her silly school. We haven't been naughty. It was just an accident that we came here." "Well, what are we going to do?" said Silky, pushing back her golden hair. "It seemed as if we'll have to stay here for 3 hours, and then we'll have to say we're sorry, and be slapped. I don't like it at all." Nobody liked it. They all sat on the floor and looked angrily and miserable. If only they could escape from Dame Slap's silly old school.